Vulikić. Ako uspe da stigne.
That's one of the challenges of digital society. Tako je.
Izvolim, reci.
Dobar dan svima. Ako se slažete, preći ću na engleski jezik zbog toga što sam i prezentaciju pripremila na njemu radi naših gostiju iz inostranstva. So my topic for today is something my colleague Dejan Masliković has already mentioned, which is the role of the Catholic Church in shaping religious discourse on social media. Može dalje? So the first question you may have is why specifically the Catholic Church in America? And the answer is really simple, because I think they have the best developed kind of net of content creators who speak specifically on Catholicism and on general life-related topics, but from a Catholic perspective. They have a very broad influence, and they have a great variety of personalities, from clergy to monastics to just laity, lay people who speak on things like marriage and family and dating and things like that from a Catholic perspective. So my research question is mainly, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of the Church's very well-developed presence in social media? And also, more importantly, which one outweighs the other? Okay, so according to a study that was conducted in 2023, here's some information on the use of social media among American Catholics. So you can see that a very high percentage use Facebook, over 70%, Instagram, over 40%, Twitter and TikTok, a bit less, but that was in 2023, so probably that percentage has grown over time. And you can see that 30% of Catholics have apps on their phones that have some kind of religious content on them. And then also a third of those surveyed, about 30%, watched religious services online. Možemo dalje? So let's have a brief overview of different Catholic personalities on social media and the stance of the Catholic Church on social media. So during the Second Vatican Council, there was a decree on the means of social communication. And basically in this decree, the Church affirmed that it had basically a positive stance on the use of social media. So I think in general, the Catholic Church as well as the Orthodox Church believes that the task of the Church is to act in the current moment, but from an eternal perspective. So in the current moment, social media is a very big part of all of our lives. And so it makes sense to me that the Catholic Church as well as the Orthodox Church would be interested in optimizing the use of social media so as to spread the faith and to influence people. Then after the Second Vatican Council, there was a document called Communio and Progressio, which was published in 1971. And again, this document encourages Christians to build and improve social media, that is, to engage in social media. And it says that the purpose of social communication is increasing attachment and connection among people. But the Catholic Church warns all of its faithful to be responsible in the use of social media. So to use social media in accordance with Christian values and morals. Možemo dalje? So here are some prominent figures and their content, their channels on social media. Let's start with clergy. Može? So arguably the most famous Catholic personality on social media is a priest called Michael Schmitz. He is known as Father Mike, usually. The thing he is now most known for is a podcast called Bible in a Year, which is a podcast that has episodes with short Bible readings that he will read and then explain or interpret the verses that he's read. And in what was I going to say? Yes, this podcast became very, very popular. You can see it hit more than 400 million downloads and plays within 1 year in 2022 when it was released. Following the Bible in a Year podcast, he also published the Catechism in a Year podcast, which has been, I think, about as popular as the Bible in a Year. Father Mike has been doing regular videos for a channel called Ascension Presents. Since COVID-19, he has also been filming weekly online mass with online homilies. And he regularly posts short videos on ethical and theological topics, and he speaks very often at various Catholic events. Možemo dalje. Another very famous figure from the clergy is Bishop Robert Barron, who is the bishop of the Diocese of Winona Rochester in America. He also has his own channel called Word on Fire. He also delivers weekly homilies, and he's also been doing that since the COVID-19 pandemic. He kind of does more intellectual, in-depth, long-format videos and podcasts on important theological and moral topics. And he's also very often a speaker at Catholic events. He's also a host of a documentary TV series called Catholicism. And then we have, and this is actually a very big topic among American Catholics, I feel like, anti-abortion, so pro-life activism, as it is called. And some of the most prominent Catholic figures on social media are actually people who are not part of the clergy, not monastics or anything like that, but just lay people who study topics like abortion or the morality of abortion. And mostly the vast majority of Catholics who speak on abortion are very opposed to abortion, as they believe it is murder from a Christian perspective. And specifically, they tend to advocate for making abortion illegal for all 9 months of pregnancy and in all conditions. So the most famous one, I believe, is Lila Rose. She is the founder of a nonprofit called Live Action, which she founded as a teenager, I believe, in 2003 when she was about 19 years old. Now she also has a very popular podcast called the Lila Rose Podcast. Another famous person who is mostly a debater, actually, she's not that present on social media, but she speaks at various debates and events, so you can see her on many YouTube channels. Her name is Stephanie Gray Connors. Another one, Trent Horn, also engages in many debates, but he also has a YouTube channel called The Council of Trent, which is supposed to be a joke because his name is Trent Horn. And then another famous person who is the president of Students for Life of America and Students for Life Action, Kristen Hawkins. She's also very frequently a debater and a speaker on abortion. Now we have some monastics with an online presence, which is also interesting because it's a little counterintuitive that, nuns and monks would engage in social media. But one of the more famous ones is Sister Miriam James Heidland. She is part of the community called SALT, which stands for Society of Our Lady of the Most Holy Trinity. She very often speaks at various Catholic events. Mostly just sharing her own personal testimony, which involves things like addiction and sexual abuse as a child and things like that, and conquering those problems in her life, eventually joining a religious community. And then part of Ascension Presents, which we've already mentioned, we have two Dominican friars, Dominican monks, who are called Father Gregory Pine and Father Jacob Bertrand Janczyk, I believe it's pronounced. And similarly to Father Mike and Bishop Barron, they address different faith topics, different theological topics, and just give advice on Catholic life in general. And finally, in this quick overview, we have just some lay people who are not even activists, or they're just not in any kind of a religious vocation. But they are devout Catholics, and they have social media channels on which they give advice basically on daily life from a Catholic standpoint. So we have people like Jackie and Bobby Angel, who are a married couple, who give advice on marriage, raising children, things like that, all from a Catholic standpoint, with Catholic morals in mind. They have a podcast called Conversations with Jackie and Bobby, and they also speak for Ascension Presents. Someone like Emily Wilson, she started when she was just a 20-year-old journalist, basically, or she had gone to school for journalism. Also just does videos with brief advice on many different life topics. And then someone like Matt Fradd, who has a very famous podcast, I believe, called Pints with Aquinas, where he has many Catholic guests who discuss many different themes related to Catholicism and Catholic life. And then surprisingly, I don't know if many people know this in America, but I think it has become more famous specifically with this podcast. So there is an Eastern rite within the American Catholic Church, where their rite of liturgy is the same as our Eastern Orthodox tradition, but they consider themselves Catholics, and they are often called Greek Catholics. So they recognize the authority of the Pope, but they have all of their religious services in the Eastern Rite. And so I think two of the most famous ones are Mother Natalija, who is a nun in a monastery in Ohio called the Christ the Bridegroom Monastery. And she does a podcast with her priest, Father Michael O'Loughlin. The podcast is called What God Is Not. And they talk about Eastern Catholicism as they see it, and generally same as the previous people I've mentioned, about Catholic values, the Christian life, many different topics related to the Christian life, basically. And so that was a brief overview of kind of the variety of different personalities that are present in Catholic social media in America. And my point in presenting all of these different types of personalities was to show actually one of the main advantages of the presence of the American Catholic Church in social media, which I believe is specifically the fact that a Catholic believer in America has an opportunity to hear about his or her faith from so many different types of people, from so many different vocations and life experiences. So you have someone like Sister Miriam James Heidland, who is a monastic, who has gone through some very traumatic things in her youth. So someone who can relate to that can hear about those things. Someone who's interested in the priesthood can listen to Father Mike, Bishop Robert Barron. You know, depending on whether you want a more intellectual take on the faith, you have someone like Bishop Barron, who is very academic. If you just want everyday life advice from maybe just a young girl you can relate to, you have someone like Emily Wilson. So I think that is a very big advantage of the American Catholic Church in social media, the fact that you have so many different experiences and people from so many different vocations who speak from so many different perspectives. So obviously another one of the advantages is readily available information on all things related to faith. So things that you would have had to put a bit more effort into to find out. Now, obviously, it's very easy with social media. Any theological topic you're interested in, anything from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, perhaps, or from the Bible, there are so many different ways that you can find those things out. You can hear many different discussions on any topic. You can easily search the Bible on the internet, search the Catechism, and so on. And therefore, also, it has great potential for spreading the faith. Again, this relates to the fact that there's such a variety of personalities on social media, because I feel like if only people like Bishop Robert Barron, for example, were speaking on Catholicism, that wouldn't be relatable to so many people. For example, a 17-year-old girl maybe wouldn't be listening to someone like Bishop Robert Barron. But since there are so many young people, so many old people, so many of the clergy and of the lay people, I think there's something relatable for everyone. And so that's the great potential for spreading the faith. So what I already said, opportunity to hear various personal testimonies and experiences. And in general, according to many studies that have been done, there are just over the years more people who are reading the Bible. Now, some possible disadvantages, I think very broadly and very simply speaking, they boil down to three things. One of them is the fact that you can very easily spread misinformation. So as we all know, on social media, everyone and anyone has a platform. There is no way to control what people are saying. So a naive 15-year-old might listen to someone who is speaking very irresponsibly, and they might just believe everything that the person is saying. I want to give an example that is actually funny rather than serious. There is a habitual practice, I think, among Catholics on social media to explain what words really mean. And this usually relates to the etymology of those words. Now, those who know me, my colleagues, know that my background is in classical philology, so I studied Latin and ancient Greek before working at the Institute of Social Sciences. And so, for example, Sister Miriam James has spoken on this, and she probably heard it from someone else. So she says, you know, reconciliation is a very important theme in Christianity. And what does reconciliation really mean? Well, the Latin of it, re means again, which is correct. Con means together, again, correct. And cilia or cilia means eyelashes. So what, which is also correct, by the way. So according to her, what reconciliation really means is to come back together eyelash to eyelash. Now, if words worked that way, that would be true, but words don't work like that. So actually, to reconcile is from re, again, and concilium, which means union. So it's to reunite. So it has nothing to do with eyelashes. But she made a whole point out of the fact that it's, you know, to come back together eyelash to eyelash. So that means to be very intimate again, and so on. So that was just a funny example that doesn't harm anyone. But the thing is that, you know, people will hear something like that, they will repeat it again and again. And if it concerns a more serious religious topic, then that has a really big potential for spreading serious misinformation. Okay, presenting personal opinions as doctrine. I mentioned the fact that some topics, such as abortion, are very emphasized, I feel like, in the current Catholic online community. So someone who is someone who is new to the faith, perhaps, who doesn't know much about the actual teaching of the church, could kind of have the impression that some topics are much more important in the faith than they really are, and that some others are much less important than they really are, when it's really just a matter of the current culture, whereas some topics are, you know, currently more popular and others are less popular, but that doesn't really speak to their importance. And finally, too much, that's what I just said, sorry. Too much emphasis on certain topics. Okay, može dalje. And so my conclusion is actually very brief, and I will end on this. I think that the real challenge that any church community is facing in the digital era or in the era of social media is really the challenge of Luke 12:48. So this is from the King James Version. For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required. And to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask the more. So as I've already mentioned, social media has an immense potential for spreading the message of any faith community, or of any community, really. And so I feel like the church is presented with the challenge that it has so many opportunities to spread the faith, and so many different people who can participate in that, and so many different methods of spreading the faith, that according to that, it has a huge responsibility to use those platforms seriously and responsibly, and with good intentions. That's it. Thank you.
Hvala koleginici Milici Janković. I još ćemo čuti u okviru ove sesije kolegu Ognjena Stankovića.